gift he gave me of confidence, I'll never forget that. It's like 25 years ago. It's still, I almost cried telling this story. That was the coolest thing. So whenever I have the chance to do that for someone, you could shred them, or you could give them the gift that keeps them going and helps their dreams come true. Always give them the gift. Always give them the gift.
I love that. I'm Vanessa Chan from Kinetic Creators, and the theme of today's show is how to become an entrepreneur when you've never done anything like this before, how to stay true to yourself in the process, and how to block out all the dream killers out there who are telling you why you can't do it. So to get us there, I'm really excited to be talking to the super engaging Dr. Liz Bales. She's a veterinarian who is now a bona fide inventor, entrepreneur, and media personality, who is the brains behind a product that was named by Hunting Feeder as the #1 game-changing product every pet owner needs to know about. That's awesome. So Liz, welcome to Kinetic Creators.
Thank you for having me. This is super exciting.
And before we get started, I just wanted you to give all our Kinetic Creator listeners out there your elevator pitch. You know, what is your company, Doc and Phoebe's Cat Company, and what's your marquee product?
So Doc and Phoebe's Cat Company is the first company that looks at cat living lifestyle and wellness from the cat's perspective. Because what we know is when we don't meet our cat's innate needs, they actually behave in all the ways that we hate, and it's our fault. So I decided to start a company where we educate about cat behavior and bring the solutions to the marketplace to solve it. And the flagship product is called the Hunting Feeder, which replicates a cat's natural behavior to hunt, catch, play with their prey, and then eat many tiny little meals throughout the day, just like they would in nature. So in nature, a cat spends 80% of their time hunting and eats between 8 and 12 mice a day. So when we take that all away from them, it actually is making them bored and fat and physically sick, which is just so amazing. And all you do is, my friends like to laugh at me that I gave mice back to cats. And it's kind of like, yeah, it's pretty simple, but no one had thought of it before.
What Liz is holding right now is basically a little mouse, right? Yeah. That's been manufactured, and it has holes in it where you can kind of stuff food in. And then what has to happen is they hide the mice everywhere, and then what happens is the cats have to go find the mice, play with it to knock the food out, and that's how they eat. And so it becomes this kind of hunting and gathering type of feeding, versus what we do now is we actually put the food in bowls and they just eat statically. And so really that was kind of the innovation you had, was we need to hide the food so they can find it in a way that they would in nature, because that's what they normally do, is they go find it.
And it actually is so multifactorial. So multiple small frequent meals that they hunt for, that they can express their predatory instinct at mealtime by literally engaging with the food like you would a mouse. The fabric has the tensile strength of mouse skin, so they can use their teeth and claws, and it sort of fulfills those triggers that they have of this is the hunt. Mice don't hang out in the same spot every day. So you really want to put them into different parts of the house all the time, so the cats actually have to go find it. So literally, it's such a simple solution of hunt, catch, play, eat multiple meals a day. And there's a few more elements that really take into account how cats interact with their environment and with food. But I had it designed by the time I got home. So in my head, we know that it's multiple small frequent meals. And I just wanted to replicate nature as best I could. So I did some quick math about the portions of food volume to calories, and figured out that about a tablespoon to a tablespoon and a half of food mimics the volume that a cat would eat in a mouse, which comes out to the amount of calories times 5 that a cat should eat in a day. And so I chose 5 mice.
Tell me a little bit about how you got to that idea. Like, was it that you're like, you know what, I see all these obese cats as a vet, and I have to figure out how to fix it? What was the inspiration?
Yeah, so as a vet, I find cats fascinating, but I would see cats literally every single day for the same list of problems. So being obese is a huge problem for the cat. Turns out cat owners really don't care. They think it's cute. So that's not why they would bring them to us. But peeing outside the litter box, barfing all the time, gobbling up their food and throwing it back up, being aggressive or destructive, waking their person up at 4 or 5 in the morning. And then this long list of chronic diseases that the cats would often have completely normal blood work for, like skin things that we couldn't make go away, chronic diarrhea that we couldn't treat with medicine. And I was just so curious about what all this was about. I found that cats really were not getting the medical attention that they needed, the proper care that they needed in the dog and cat setting together.
It's just like high school, right? The dogs are the popular ones and the cats are not. And you're like, you know what? Let me go after the misfit cats and try to help them.
Well, yes, and it's exactly right. Yes, and there's actually more cats than dogs in America, living in homes in America. So it's kind of like high school with, the most of the cool kids, except you guys, are actually end up not being cool as grownups. It's kind of the same thing for dogs and cats. The future of, I think, revenue and growth in the pet industry is in cats.
Well, that's why we have you here, is your trailblazing. And I really love your story because you had no idea what you were doing, right? And so I think our listeners are totally going to relate to that because you're an amazing vet. You saw this thing, but you knew nothing about business. You didn't know even how to sew. You didn't know how to make a prototype. So just walk us from, how did you kind of get the idea, we've got fat cats, I now want to fix it because they're underrepresented. How do you go from that to getting on QVC, being a media personality, all of that? Take me to the very first step of what you did.
Yeah, so the first step was I was at a 3-day continuing education lecture. And for 3 days, we circled around every major problem that cats come to the vet for and how to solve them. And the common thread in every lecture was how you feed them. So I was like, wait a minute. We know why forget medicine. We know why these behavior problems are happening. And we know that behavior is the #1 cause of death for our cats. And as doctors, we're not treating the #1 cause of death for our patients. That to me was crazy.
I want to highlight there. One is that you went to a place where people were talking about problems, right? And then second is you had listened, right? You heard something and it didn't sit right with you.
I still have this very first picture I drew, which is essentially what this looks like. And I wrote down my little criteria and in my kitchen in Chestnut Hill. And I'm like, what am I going to do with that? Like me, that, and, $3 will get me a coffee at Starbucks. And the next day, my kids wanted to bake cupcakes and we made cupcakes and took them to the neighbor's house. So I wouldn't eat them. I let them bake if we can get rid of them. And the neighbor invited us in. Was a good friend of mine and her parents were there. And her dad was very stiff and not that excited that I was crashing their dinner. So I was trying to, do my song and dance and talk to him. I was like, oh, so what do you do? And he said, I'm an inventor and a medical device manufacturer. And I said, you need to sit down. And he's like, I'm sorry, what? I said, you heard me, sit down. And I pitched the whole thing to him and explained it all. And he said, come to my office Monday morning. So I would say that not being afraid to show up and convince people of something all the time is the only way that this happened. So when I went in on Monday, I had to convince him again, and he brought his son in, and I had to convince the son. And then we started prototyping with stuff that already existed, that I would just patch this with that and cut a hole in this other thing and see what worked till we got it. And I was practicing vet, so I could just take it to the hospital and give it to my friends and clients, and they would test it out and get feedback.
What was the first step you did? So you have this amazing conversation, you deliver cupcakes, and he's like, this sounds great. You then have some things around the house. Like, this is important for all our creators to think about. Your first prototype does not need to be fancy. You can build it out of even like a toilet paper roll, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. So it was toilet paper rolls, Coke bottles, trying to get the sizes and portions. And then when I started to figure out much closer to my prototype, then I went to the pet store and bought things that were like it, but that I could also cut holes in or cut apart or so.
Right, the toys that you found that could be kind of a proxy for it and things like that.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
And you probably went through what, like 20 prototypes with just found materials and things like that, and then you hid them around your house for your cat. Like you just hide it for your cat, or what did you do?
At least. And I actually didn't have a cat at the time. I would take them to the office and my friends and clients would try them out and then give me feedback. And the hardest part actually was the skin. So I don't sew and I don't know anything about fabric. And in my mind, I'm like, why is this so hard? And I'm going to do it myself. And so I went to one of my other friends who became a partner in the business. She had a sewing machine and she sewed. And I said, well, let's just play with this. And so I cut it. So I learned through all those failures, which literally was like a year of mouse skin. Can you believe that?
But the reason why it took a year, which is I think a really important point for everyone, is that you didn't trust that you could do this, right? So you were like, I'm outsourcing. I'm going to find all these people who know what they're doing. This is their job. And you tried and they didn't get it. In the end, it was literally you going and pounding the pavement, finding new fabrics, bringing things that you wanted, and then just finding a friend to go do this.
Very recently that I was like, guess what? No one can do it better than me, which is, you know, maybe really arrogant, but I think it's also helps you move forward. I seek out other people's opinion and expertise all the time, but now finally I am also not afraid to do anything myself. Whereas, you know, my whole life, I would look at something and be like, I can't do it, get overwhelmed and just not. And now after having done this and being in the company of so many other amazing innovators, I'm like, well, maybe there's a YouTube video, even silly household repairs. I'm like, why would I call a plumber? I'm going to watch a YouTube. I'm a doctor, for God's sakes. I understand how, you know, tubes and things work and how different is the sink than a cardiovascular system.
So I really want our listeners to hear this, right? Which is that being a perfectionist and feeling you have to be perfect at everything is going to prevent you from being an entrepreneur.
Yep.
And so I think it's really around just having the faith that you need to try something. And I really love the fact that you're using found objects, using your own skills and just doing it. And that's really what I think the inspiration is right now, is just start with something. Don't make it perfect.
Yeah.
You know,
and just like this, what we're doing right now, I sought out advice from all kinds of different innovators, not in my field, but anyone who innovated anything. I would say, what made you think you could do this? Like, you've done this. I talked to an artist in Barcelona who, he actually made the face of a person on the entire Washington Mall out of dirt on the ground. It's amazing. You guys should look at it. It's called Out of Many One. And I said, what made you think you could do it? And he said, I have no idea. I just knew that I could, and it didn't occur to me that I couldn't. So that I tried to absorb that spirit of go for it from everybody that I could. But also, like, this path is riddled with failures, expensive failures, and failures that impact your personal life and all kinds of stuff. And it's also okay.
And so that's kind of, we've gone a little bit of you had the idea, you got the prototype, and then now we went into the biggest challenge for you was kind of fast forward 5 years and trying to make economics work. So let's go back to, you had the prototype and then you launched a Kickstarter campaign. So talk to me a little bit about that and how that whole thing worked.
So the beginning was really a Cinderella story. The idea was so good, and the people in the veterinary world were so excited and encouraging. And I assembled this amazing team of very experienced people, and that was wonderful. Who the guy I told you about, who was the medical device manufacturer and inventor, and his son, who actually was a finance guy, and another friend of mine that I brought in who had done launches and marketing as a very successful in her field. And then another woman who was really an expert at sourcing things and supply chain. And so we had this crack team and everyone was very energized. It was a very exciting time. And we decided to launch a Kickstarter campaign, which was a ton of work. People, if you think you're just gonna like throw it up on Kickstarter and you succeed, like that is a miracle. But making a successful Kickstarter campaign is a ton of work. and we were a great team. We did it. And what we tried to do was show that someone wanted to buy this product before we made it, you know, at any kind of scale, and raise $35,000 so that we could buy the molds to cast the plastic. So we set out that goal of $35,000 in 30 days and see what happened. Well, we met the goal in 4 days and ended up in our crowdfunding making over $250,000.
That's amazing.
It was
that must have been a real high, right?
It was so fun. And we were, the people part is always the most fun for me. We were so excited. Getting calls from TV shows. I got a half a page in the New York Times, Philadelphia Inquirer, like lots of press, and just feeling like, wow, this is really gonna go. It was super exciting.
And I mean, part of it is like you saw a real problem because of all these problems are coming down to fat cats and their behavior, and you have a real solution that no one's really come to. And so I think it's amazing, right? And that's why it took off, was the story was there. The story was genuine, it was real, and you were able to develop something. And the struggle that you had was on the financial side, right? The way to make money and make sure this cash was really at the front and center.
If I was gonna go back now, again, if I probably wouldn't, I don't know if I would have had the courage knowing all the things. But I think the biggest thing is if you need to be at scale where, you know, you're making many tens of thousands of units a year and selling them, number one, cash flow. Number two, the marketplace, each marketplace is really different. I didn't know anything about who would be, I was thinking about the end user. I was thinking about the customer because I was a customer. That I understood. I go to the store, I buy a thing.
Right. And so I think that's a little bit of the dichotomy and tension you have, right? Was, you know, you have some that are going to save lives, like cats' lives and all that, make their lives better. And on the other side, you're trying to sell to people who want to make money, right? So there's a little bit of that kind of figuring that out. And that's probably the tension that you've had the most on your journey.
Yes.
And along the way, you found some target markets and places where it just sang. I mean, talk to me about Australia and tell all of the listeners about, you know, an example of a place where there's a need for it and people are excited for it and it just took off.
So with all that hard work I was telling you about, every now and then I call them inbox moments. And it's very Cinderella story. Like it's like the worst day and you open your email and it's like, oh my God, the New York Times wants to interview me. Well, that is what happened with Australia. We were coming up on needing a big inventory order and having the cash to place the order. And that cash flow moment was really scary. And I knew it was coming because we had a great financial model at that point, which is another thing. I didn't even know what that was 5 years ago. And now I'm gonna say, get a financial model. And in my inbox in the morning was a note from some guy in Australia that wanted to talk to me about buying a container full. So a container is like 12,000 units. And that's a significant revenue source that I wouldn't have to work for. But what I also learned on the journey was you get stuff like that that's also a scam. So figuring out which is which, like, look at this is going to be great. And an experienced person is like, that's not real. And you're like, wah, 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 wah. So like first I just say, is this real? Is it's not real? And then we figured out it was real. And I had my call with the Australian. And so what was happening and is happening in Australia is that cats are not native to Australia. And they're these incredible hunters that are killing 8 to 12 prey every day. And they're literally wiping out certain bird and small rodent species to extinction. So the Australians who are fanatics about those birds and small rodents want to protect them. And they say no more cats outside. So it's a big conflict between the indigenous species people and the cat people. And so these cats that were out hunting all the time now have to live inside, and they're seeing the exact problems in a more amplified way that this product takes care of. So he placed an order for, I can't remember if it was 10 or 12,000 units. I remember actually I was at my house in Chestnut Hill in my backyard, and we hung up from the call where he actually wired the money into the account. I hung up the phone and I sat down on my bluestone patio and just sobbed. And I'm not a crier, but the relief of, I really thought it was going to be over and it wasn't over.
You got a cash infusion and it saved it right there. You talk a lot about the channels, right? You have to understand what the decision makers are, and you're kind of learning along the way how important some of the things they're thinking about is. So talk to me a little bit about, how you first meet some of these buyers, right? Like you go to trade shows and things like that. Tell me a little bit about, how trade shows works, because I think many of our listeners aren't even sure what a trade show is and why those things are important.
And I'm sure that every industry is a little bit different, but the way the pet business works is there's 2 giant trade shows a year. One's called Super Zoo and the other is called Global Pet Expo. And one is in a conference center in Florida, the other is in a conference center in Las Vegas, which actually, when you guys start doing these things, they're all exactly the same. You could be on Mars, they're all the same. And it's 25 football fields full of pet products. So food and cages and leashes and, everything you could ever imagine. And a lot of the big companies' names that like big pet food companies and some of the giant names in pet product companies and pharmaceuticals that are in the OTC space, their booths at these things actually look like houses. Some people have a booth that has like a tour bus, comes right into the conference center. It's amazing. It is a spectacle. Probably, if you guys ever went to the car show, it's like that on steroids for pets. So when I walked in there for the first time, I'd never been to one before ever. And we walked in to launch the very first time we were bringing this product to market. And I walked in and I was like, this is crazy. Here we are with this, like, I don't know. I knew the product was great, but all the rest, it just showed you how you don't know. And I did not know anything. But we actually won Best New Cat Product in that show, which was amazing. So the way it works is all these buyers go walking around. There's lay people walking around. It's very hard to know who's who. Now that I know what's going on, the sophisticated person will set up all their meetings with the important people, and you set up your dinners with other people, and it's a very social, structured event. But when you
have a booth, right? And you have a booth in the conference center, which is all with your product, right? And so tell me about that booth and how that works.
Well, I was going to say, when you're first starting, also, you don't know anybody or anything, so you're just kind of hoping someone important walks by and you can grab them. So your booth, you can buy all different sorts of spaces, and it's enormously expensive. But we bought the smallest you could get as a 10 by 10 booth. And then we always tried to make what was going to show look nice. So you make what we call a booth back. So it's like a swanky 10 by 10 by, I don't know, 8 or 10 foot high, it's basically a giant sign in the back. And all your products are there and your displays are there. And you usually do some sort of contesty, promo-y thing. So you're giving away chocolate or pens or some marketing thing to get people there. And you dress it up. Like I said, people spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on their booth to make it awesome.
And so what happened with your first booth? Tell us about that.
So the first booth was okay. That went really well. But about a year later, we were launching the rebrand. So we learned a lot in the process, and we changed the name and the colors and the instructions and the website. And this was it. We were doing the launch of the rebrand. That was a big deal. And at this point, we had partnered with the Philadelphia 76ers basketball team, has an innovation lab. And so the executive director of the lab, Seth Berger, was coming to be with us, and he founded the company and won. We were able to score appointments with most of the big box pet stores. So this was like the coming out party. We had arrived. So it was me, my partner, Phoebe at the time, and our 2 helpers were coming with us. And then we were meeting Seth and the other lab member, Ryan, down there. But there were horrible thunderstorms in Philadelphia, and everybody's flights got changed, moved. It was a total mess. And half our stuff wasn't there. The booth back that we had spent so much time and money on wasn't even there. So we're going to have like a black drape in the back, which is like, it's so rinky dink and pathetic. So he's desperately trying to figure out where the booth back is. We ultimately figured out that our booth back was still at FedEx. So like, what are we going to do about that? And at this point, Phoebe and our other helper had come and were tearing open the boxes. We didn't have enough time to get the rebranded new product to Philadelphia and then to Las Vegas or Orlando, wherever we were. So we had them shipped directly to the trade show. We hadn't seen them yet. So we tear open the boxes and they looked beautiful. Everything was right. And we were assembling it. And the first person went to slide the sleeve over the box and it didn't fit. It was too small. So we couldn't display our product now to anyone. So we had no product to show and we had no booth back for our big coming out party. It was a total disaster. And
I'd be crying at this point. I'd be like sobbing in the corner. So what did you do?
Was it the humiliation? And Seth wasn't there yet. So they were going to get there in the morning. And it was like, you can't not be ready. You just can't. Like, we figure something out. So my team went to Walmart and got X-Acto knives and glue and all kinds of supplies. And they stayed up the entire night. What they did was slice on the seam of the outer thing and glue it to the box. So that little space that was the difference in the size was immaterial, but then you couldn't actually open it. So it's kind of like the fake Christmas tree boxes at the stores. So we had a few right in front that just had the product displayed and everything else was a total ruse. But it worked great. And then Grant figured out that the booth back was at FedEx, which opened at 9. Well, the show opens at 9 and our first customer was 9:30, the appointment. And so he went to FedEx and waited at FedEx until they opened, went dashing in, got the booth back before they loaded it on the truck. Because if they had loaded it on the truck, we probably never would have gotten it back. And he came running in with the booth back and we got it all set up. And by the time our first appointment got there, it looked like nothing had ever gone wrong.
And so how did you not freak out? So you talked about there's this whole justification of needing to be perfect and all that. So you must have been trying hard to stay zen through this because you're the spokesperson, right? So how do you not melt down during all this?
I'm not really a melter downer externally. Inside, I think my blood pressure must have been like 200 over 140. The pressure inside is just amazing. I don't really know that I have an answer to that. You just can't. If you melt, you're done. So
you basically fake it. You basically sit there and you figure out, like, I think the example in the story is things are going to blow up. Things are going to be bad. And to your point, you have these major investors coming, right? The head of the 76ers lab is, invested in all this and you can't look bad. So you just have to figure it out, right? So you just sit there and figure it out.
Just figure it out. And now, like, nothing phases me. Whatever the disaster comes my way, the day it's not a total disaster, you're like, look at that worked. Oh my God. But you're just expecting chaos and knowing that whatever it is, you can't predict it. Whatever the chaos is you think that's going to happen is not the one that happened. And whatever it is, you actually will figure it out somehow, some way. But there's really, like, you prepare everything you can prepare.
Yep.
You try everything you can try, and it's not like you're home playing video games, but stuff's going to blow up that you can't even begin to imagine, and figure it out.
I'd be okay with it.
Yep.
So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. One of our favorite segments is what we call our domino interview. And we're fortunate that there's a bunch of people like you who are excited to share their journey with the students. And so what we're going to do is ask you a question that our previous interviewee had for you. And so our previous interviewee was David Peckman, who is currently a partner at Venrock and was previously one of the co-creators of Apple's music group. And the question he had for you was, tell me the experience in your life that you were the most uncomfortable.
So this is before, I've been a train wreck most of my life and just figured it out, which I guess makes me comfortable. I'm an entrepreneur. In vet school, I wasn't really, I wasn't intellectually, I was cut out for it, but I kind of throw up and pass out a lot. So in anatomy lab, I threw up every single day. every single day. And so that was just kind of like, oh, she's throwing up again. So when people tell stories like, I was going to go to medical school, but I got dizzy around blood, I'm like, big deal, suck it up. But the most uncomfortable was my senior year of vet school, my 4th year. I was in surgery, small animal surgery, and the clinician who was the attending was this very dashing Australian guy who in his scrubs had like the bulging muscles. And he asked me to scrub in for a 5-hour surgery, removing a rib mass and doing a diaphragmatic transposition inside of a corgi. Really interesting surgery. And I did all my preparation and I was so excited that he asked me, and we scrubbed in, and in like, I don't know, 20 minutes of the 5-hour surgery, I passed out. So I don't actually smack my head. Like I know it's coming. So I'm like, I gotta go. And I went out into the hallway. I'm like, I can't do this. I gotta go back in there. And so I pulled myself together enough. And then you got to go through, if you guys ever watch ER, you got to go through the scrubbing thing again. So you got to scrub and get a new gown and new gloves and a new mask and a new head thing. And in I went again. Well, about 20 minutes later, and I went down again. Out I go 5 times. The 5th time when I passed out, his name's Dr. Holt. Thank you, Dr. Holt. I will never, ever, ever forget you. He said, Liz, please don't come back. Please don't come back. I'd probably cost the surgery like an extra $1,000 in gloves and gowns and cap. It was a total disaster. So
but even despite that, you can still be a vet, right? Even despite the fact that you can't take surgeries, you could still become a vet.
Yes, you have to pass your boards and all that stuff. But I got to finish the story. So the next day, this is also around when we took our board exams and the pressure is like out of control. And the next day he comes and finds me. Miss Bales, come with me. So he takes me back into the OR and he had a cat on the table and it was just him and me. And I don't really think he said anything to me at all, but he spayed the cat. And at the end of the spay, so the cat's still open. He had just finished the ligatures inside. He hands me the tools and he says, you close. And he walked out. And I've never passed out in surgery since that day because it was one of the coolest things anyone's ever done for me, because he could have shredded me and he could have failed me. I don't know. He could have done all kinds of stuff, but he set that whole thing up. Now I get it, what he did for, I did get it then, but I didn't really think about how much you can just like, where do you even get that cat? It wasn't a client's cat. I don't know how he did that, but he set me up to succeed. And the gift he gave me of confidence, I'll never forget that. It's like 25 years ago. I almost cried telling this story. That was the coolest thing. So whenever I have the chance to do that for someone, you could shred them, or you could give them the gift that keeps them going and helps their dreams come true. Always give them the gift. Always give them the gift.
I love that. And so for our listeners, they should really think about when you're at that point where you think you're going to vomit, you can't do things and all that, just have faith. And it sounds like when someone had faith in you, you just believed in yourself. And so really almost in some ways was in your head, right?
It's 100% in your head. It's 100% in your head. But also, like, if you can't stop passing out and throwing up, like that's just your body kind of taking over. So again, I don't know. I don't always have the answer, but I'm just not gonna quit. It doesn't really matter if I believe in it and it's my thing. So I told my husband I want on my tombstone is she died trying, and I probably will die trying something else crazy, but I'm not gonna quit. That's for sure.
I love it. So now I'm going to turn the tables on you. And what do you want to ask our next founder or executive? What question would you be dying to ask someone?
So I love this. And I'm going to throw a twist on it because we focus in entrepreneurship so much on going for it and not quitting. I want to know what happened that they said, you know what, it's time to quit. It's time to quit. Either with, it doesn't have to be the whole shebang, but at what point So you know what it is? I think we kind of make it's not really real that you're going to always do everything and it's going to work out if you just keep pushing. Sometimes you got to cut bait. And when was that for that person?
That's an awesome question. So we'll ask that to our next person. Liz, it's been a real pleasure talking to you today. And I hope our listeners have learned a couple of things from your journey. First of all, that it's really important to surround yourself with support systems. Throughout your entire story, there were examples of people who were there that believed in you. And that was really important because there are going to be times that you're so low, that you need someone to be like, you know what, you've got this. And that when you do have that, you can get out of your own head because oftentimes you're the person causing yourself to fail. So I think it's really important that you surround yourself with people who love you and believe in you because you're going to need that boost of energy when you're feeling down in the dumps. I think the second thing I really loved was that you were really good about sharing your ideas with a lot of people. You're not afraid to go network and talk to people, and you're confident in that you'll learn from those folks. So even though you may not have the idea completely formed, you're looking to connect with people so that you can learn from them. And then third is you are confident in your ability to just believe you can start with something. And I think the prototype you did is a perfect example of it. You just started with things around the house, started trying to see what you could build and not worrying about it being the perfect end product, but more what can I learn from it? And through all these massive design iterations, your product, your thinking got that much better. And the most important thing I think is what you epitomize is that you just have fun and joy in everything that you do. And I think that's really important. And you surround yourself with mentors, people, friends, and others that help with that. And I think in life, if you're not surrounding yourself and having fun and joy, then there's no point in it. And I think you've done a fabulous job on your journey, sharing all that joy with all of us. And so with that,
for you guys, I want to say, I'm so excited for you. Find your thing. Don't give up when you know you have your hooks in something. Don't give up. And if you ever need a pep talk, call me. I got you.
She does. And I will guarantee she has you. All of us do, actually. And so with that, it's a wrap. And I hope our listeners are energized to get moving and to turn their potential into action. Thank you, everybody.